I want you to imagine this. And no, I'm serious. Close your eyes right now and imagine this. You have absolutely mastered the art of charisma. You are at a tier so far beyond the capabilities of any ordinary human that they look at you as if you are superhuman. Every single word that comes out of your mouth is carefully curated to have maximum impact on its recipient. Even the most stubborn of people crumble under your words, won over to your way of thinking in just moments. In a world like this, you can get anything and everything you want. You are the puppeteers, and the mortals of this earth, your puppets. Any person you want, be it a model or a celebrity, you can seduce at ease. Really, just think about it. You can go up to the hottest girl you know, have one conversation with her, and as hard as she may try, she won't be able to stop thinking about you for the rest of the day. You would love that, wouldn't you? You would do anything to achieve this reality in which you can almost mind control every person you meet. So go and achieve it. You're an ambitious man, aren't you? All you need is a mastery over the skill of charisma. And today, that's exactly what I'm going to teach you. So, you're in luck. Let's begin. The first and possibly most important thing on this list is warmth. Now, whether you like it or not, our brains are wired, designed in a way to detect if a certain person is friendly or hostile. Think about it. It evolves from these Stone Age caveman times where when you saw a new human being, the first thing you needed to know is this person trying to kill me, or are they not trying to kill me? Are they friendly, right? And so our brains have become really good at figuring out, well, is this person trying to kill me or not? So that means it's really good at detecting emotion. And now I want to ask you a question. When you meet someone, what sort of energy, what sort of vibe, what sort of emotion would you want to give off as your first impression to them? One of coldness, anxiety, closed, don't approach me type of emotion? Or would you want to convey one of warmth, openness, and confidence? I think we both know which one's better there. And yet, even though this is so self-explanatory, a lot of people don't actually use this. Like, if you're in a public space right now, let's say you're in a classroom, just look around you. Everyone is hunched over in this like, don't talk to me type of like looking at their phone type of mode. And then they wonder why nobody talks to them. Well, I'll tell you why. Because you're hunched over, because your posture is shit, because you've got a frown on your face, and it's because when anyone walks by, you fail to hold eye contact, look away, bury your face further into your electronic device like some antisocial freak, and then you're like, oh, I wonder why nobody talks to me. Don't believe me? Well, right now, as I said that, did you have perfect posture while you were watching this? Did you have a smile on your face? Did you have nice, open, confident body language watching this video like in this great, confident manner? Would anyone want to talk to you in that position that you were in as you were just watching that? No, I didn't think so. Thankfully, this is all pretty easy stuff to fix. Well, as long as you're consciously thinking about it. Thankfully, this is all pretty easy stuff to fix. You know how to improve your posture as long as I remind you. You know how to smile as long as I remind you. All of these things, it's just if you consciously think about them and have these in your mind, it's not that hard. And the most important one, I would say, and also possibly the most basic one, is just smiling. A smile is so basic, yet it immediately conveys a sense of happiness and warmth, and it's gonna make the other person across from you feel better. When you're talking to someone, we've all talked to that person that's like frowning and they're like, and talking to you like this, and they're like, sorry, but if someone comes up to you and he's smiling and he's laughing and he's talking to you like this, you're going to be happy too. Emotions are contagious, and also the things you say come across as way more lighthearted. I mean, a single phrase can mean totally different things based on the intonation and context. Like, if I said, "Oh, you're home," that's a great thing. But if I said, oh, you're home, right? Same words, but just with my intonation. In one, I was really happy to see that you're home. And in the other, it's like, oh, like you're home. That's not a good thing, right? And so when you smile, that's giving off that better intonation of, oh, like I'm happy to be with you. I'm happy to see you. And that's a great way to start with warmth. But as I said, this is all pretty basic stuff. If you just remember to be warm and positive, you've got it. So I don't want to spend any more time on that, and I want to move on to law number 2. The second law is to never argue. And if you're confused, don't worry. I was confused when I heard this too. What do you mean don't argue? Just in certain scenarios, don't argue excessively? What could this mean? No, don't argue at all. And I was like, how could this be? But as I kept researching more and more into charisma, this same message kept getting pushed into my face, force-fed into me. And I realized if everyone's saying it, there must be some truth to this. So as it turns out, arguing is actually futile. And not only that, but it should be avoided at all costs. One quote that I remember from my read-through of How to Win Friends and Influence Over People, and it's a great book. You should definitely read it. I recommend it. But one of the quotes about this said, "A man forced against his will is of the same opinion still." I think that's a great quote, and it's something I kind of memorized and I kept in my head. A man forced against his will is of the same opinion still. Another book called 48 Laws of Power, which I think you've probably heard of, it's pretty popular, had a quote similar to this as well. It said, "Any momentary triumph you think you have gained through argument is really a Pyrrhic victory. The resentment and ill will you stir up is stronger and lasts longer than any momentary change of opinion." So why is it that all of these great renowned books are so passionately against the act of arguing? So much so that each of them had to dedicate an entire chapter of their book or more to just talking about this single thing. What could it be? Well, as it turns out, not only is arguing uncharismatic, it's also a terrible way to convince people, which is like how? That's how arguing is how you convince people, is what you would think and is what modern day has told us, but it's wrong. Because you see, when you start arguing, you basically declare war on the other person. Not war, but it's like you declare these two sides. You say, hey, I'm arguing for this side, you're arguing for that side, right? And when you enter an argument, what happens is your opponent, and I'm saying your opponent because in an argument, it's always you versus an opponent, right? You're trying to clash these two arguments. Instead of trying to reach a common understanding, you're fighting against each other to see who will prevail, right? It's like whose idea will win versus what should be, which is, oh, let's compare our ideas so that we can get a better common understanding. That's how it should be. But what happens when we argue is they dig their heels into the ground. They're like, even if you keep pushing great arguments against them, and even if they start losing, if they're dedicated to their side of the argument, which they will be if you start arguing with them, what they will do is throw out the most outrageous statements that they don't even believe in just for the sake of not losing the argument. I'm so passionately speaking about this because this has happened to me so many times. When the person in front of me, like, I give them the most reasonable arguments, and it's like so annoying because they know they've lost, but they just won't admit it, and they just keep saying the most stupid things just for the sake of defending their argument, just for the sake of not admitting they're wrong. And it's And if this has happened to you, which it probably has, where you've been in an argument, you know you should have won, you know you're right, but they just won't freaking listen, and they keep saying outrageous shit just to, like, for the sake of not admitting that they're wrong and you're right, well, the solution is don't argue. Also, being the person who argues all the time is really uncharismatic. Like, remember, you're trying to convey a certain emotion to other people, and the way you treat them, the emotion you make them feel is what they will remember you by. And if you're the type of person who always points out their mistakes, who always argues with them, they're going to remember you as the person that they can never get along with. They're going to remember you as that person who always nitpicks every little mistake. I bet right now, if you thought about it, you can think of someone who just always argues with you for no reason. And it's just like, screw that person, right? You don't want to be that person. So what's the solution here? Well, as much as you can, don't argue. Even if you notice, let's say, that someone's made a mistake or that they have an opinion that you know is wrong or that you don't agree with, if it's nothing major, just let it be. Like, let's say someone's saying a sentence and they make a grammatical mistake and it's not a big deal. Like, you understood what they said. You don't need to be like, actually you said that wrong. Using that word in that specific context is technically grammatically incorrect. So don't be that person. If someone makes and I'm saying that because I'm responsible of this myself. I used to, people used to say certain phrases that were grammatically incorrect, and I'd be like, well, actually, that's incorrect. You should have said this, and arranged it in this way. Nobody cares, and everyone hated me for it. There's no point. And even if, someone tells you something that you don't agree with, as long as it doesn't matter that much, just say, okay. People can have their own opinions. It's not the end of the world if they make a small mistake. Just don't point it out, and it'll save you and your charisma big time. But I will admit, there are times in which you kind of have to convince someone of something. There are going to be times where you can't just say, oh, let them have this opinion. You have to tell them, no, look, what you're saying is actually incorrect. You should be thinking this way. So what then? Do you just say, okay, I guess I have to argue now, and I won't do it again next time? Is that the idea? No. Remember what we discussed earlier. Arguing is not only uncharismatic, but it's really bad at convincing people also. So what you have to do is actually, instead of taking opposing sides, start on their side and slightly nudge them over. So instead of it being a tug of war where both of you are trying to tug at the string from opposite sides, make it so that you start at his side and you take him on a walk and guide him through to your side of the argument, I guess. But it's not an argument, your side, your opinion, right? So if they've got a certain opinion, be like, oh yeah, that's totally right. And start agreeing with them and be like, yeah, you're right. Keep a smile. You're totally not being aggressive in any way. You're agreeing with them and be like, yeah. And oh, I had this great idea. What if we added on this? And you sort of slightly nudge them on to that point. You kind of walk them to where you want them to get to towards your current opinion. Then they can admit you're right without admitting that they're wrong. It's oh yeah, we're both on the same team, and oh look, we're together moving towards the right answer. Then that's good. And also another thing I want to tell you, because you will do this, and you probably do this. There are two words that you should never use when trying to convince someone. It's no and but. Hear me out. First of all, no, right? No is just, do not use it, because it automatically, first of all, it hurts the other person's ego. They say something, they put their whole opinion out there, and you just judge them and say, no, you're wrong. I totally disagree with you. You are incorrect. Here's why. And along with being uncharismatic, as I said, it's directly argumentative. It's when you say no, you're like, hey, I'm on the opposite side here, and now let's try and play tug of war, and now we're on the opposite side. That's not what you want. The other statement is but, and you might be like, okay, but why can't I say but? Yeah, you're right, but blah blah blah. So why should you not say but? Well, you see, when you say that, it totally invalidates whatever is before it. Because when you say but, you're implying that whatever you just said but to is wrong. That's the nature of the word. The nature of the word but is to say, I disagree with you. Like, this is your argument, but you're wrong, is really what you're implying whenever you use the word but. And once again, that places you in an argumentative state, makes them feel like, I guess, personally attacked. You're like, yeah, what you said could be true, but I think this. Yes, it's worse. It's better than saying just, no, you're wrong. But you're basically saying the same thing. It comes across as the same thing. Which is what brings me to the solution to the no and but problem. One of the phrases that haunted me throughout middle and elementary school, and that I hated when teachers told me to use, but only now have I realized the full potential of. And that's yes and. Yes and is like the incarnation of what I just described on how to convince people. Remember how I said go onto their side and then nudge them towards the correct goal? That's yes and is like that in 2 words. We've simplified that entire explanation into 2 words. You say yes, which establishes, hey, we're on the same side. I agree with you. And then you say and, which nudges them forward. It's like, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not saying but. If I said yes, but, right? You expect me to say something negative about their argument after that but. But if I say yes and, you expect me to agree and add some sort of constructive, like, plus details to that thing you already agree with, in which case you're on the same side and nudging them towards your opinion. And that works so much better than coming across at someone and saying, no, you're wrong, here's why, let's argue about it, and let's have this pointless, meaningless, waste of time conversation where even if I end up proving to you that I am right, you will now hate me for having brought up this argument, and you will from now on think of me as that annoying guy who always argues with everyone. So, that was law 2. And let's move on to law number 3. Have you ever had that moment where you're in the heat of a argument, or you're in the heat of a conversation with your friends, and you're all saying out like increasingly more out-of-pocket jokes, or like you're arguing with someone and it's getting increasingly more aggressive, and then you just blurt something out, and as you say it, you're like, oh shoot, I shouldn't have said that, but it's too late, you've already said it. And it's happened to all of us. You see, excitement makes us speak faster, it makes our voice more high-pitched, it makes us sound less confident, and it's going to make us have less control over what we say. So, in a world where everyone's speaking fast, high-pitched, loud, with little control, being able to just slow down is like a superpower. So, how can we achieve this? A very potent tool for this is to take a deep breath, like into your diaphragm, deep breath every time before you speak, right? Someone asks you a question, and instead of like jumping at the question and like answering it, deep breath. What's that going to do? Well, a few things. First of all, the deep breath gives you time to think about the question, mull it over, and actually think about an appropriate response. That way you don't say something stupid. You don't rush in and realize, oh, maybe I should have planned what I'm going to say. Like, you pause mid-sentence. You don't want that to happen. Just take a deep breath. It's going to give you time. That's the first thing. Second thing is it's going to make your voice deeper. You see, breathing deeply into your diaphragm is a great way to make your voice sound deeper, which in turn is going to make you more attractive, more confident, more, all the deep voice benefits you already know. Another thing is it's going to keep your emotions in check, because when you take a deep breath, it's going to calm you, so you're not getting lost in your emotions and looking uncharismatic in the middle of the conversation. Always, you know what you're saying, deep voice, take a moment, pause, shows you're confident, and you're going to speak smarter. A deep breath is just one of the best tools you can have. Another really great but also counterintuitive tool that, due to its counterintuitivity, nobody else knows how to use this technique. It's speaking quietly for emphasis. You're like, wait, speaking quietly to emphasize something? When I want to emphasize something, I usually like say it louder than everything else so that it gets emphasized. That's how you emphasize something. Or so you'd think, right? I want you to think about it this way. When someone's screaming at you, do you like listen in and like really pay full attention, or do you turn away and they're like, oh God, stop screaming at me, right? That's what you think. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, we get it, you're screaming, please stop, I've had enough. That's the most common reaction. That's how someone's supposed to react. Now imagine when someone's speaking really quietly. Like for me, it's always in class, like the teacher calls on a student and there's always that one student who can't for the life of them project. It's like they speak and you see their mouth moving, but you can't even hear what they're saying because they're at the other side of the classroom. And you're like, you're like, what the heck are they saying? You're like really trying to listen in, right? But did you notice that when they were speaking more quietly, you were like fully focusing in on that? If you were trying to hear them, you weren't thinking about, oh, like, what am I going to eat for lunch tomorrow? You were thinking, what are they saying? What are they saying? That's like what you're thinking about if someone speaks quietly. So if I want to emphasize something, I can whisper it. And suddenly people will like be drawn in, literally drawn in to try and hear those words and pay full attention to it. And I think it's called the whisper technique. Although I don't know its official name, I think that's what it is. Trust me, this tool is something nobody else knows how to use, and if you use it, it's going to be extremely beneficial. Anyway, that's all for today's video. If you found this useful, as always, please like, subscribe. It helps me out a ton. Comment to let me know you liked it. I read through all of my, well, non-existent comments. So if you liked it, I would really appreciate a comment, and who knows, maybe I'll make a part 2. See you.